Good evening, beautiful people. I hope I can be heard. I'm pretty sure I can be seen. Ah, there's Juno. Awesome. So, this evening we are going to discuss abugidas or alphasyllabaries, depending on your preference of terminology. We'll wait a few more minutes since we're supposed to start at 9 o'clock. We got a couple more minutes there. Trying to change some settings here. I'm excited too, Juno. Abugidas are not only the most common conscript type made, but they are my favorite. They are very malleable, which we will discuss during this evening's stream. All right. So I think I'll go ahead and get started a couple minutes early. Hopefully, people will join soon. If not, we'll just talk about abugidas until our heart's content. So I'm going to select this window here. All right. So we got our general description of what an abugida is, just real briefly so that we understand what we're talking about here. Fundamental principles of an abugida apply to words made up of consonant vowel syllables, CV syllables. Some of the key features down here, you can modify the final letter that explicitly indicates the lack of a vowel or a virama as it's called. A lack of a vowel marking on the letter, often with ambiguity between no vowel and a default inherent vowel. The most common inherent vowel is a or a. However, there have been abugidas where the inherent vowel is an e or an eh, and I think there's one or two that have like a back vowel, like an o or an u. But those are the rare ones. The most common is a. And vowel marking on the letter for a short or neutral vowel, such as a schwa, with ambiguity between no vowel and that short vowel or neutral vowel, or a visually unrelated letter. There's some really complex abugidas out there. The majority of abugidas, though, are related to the Brahmic family of scripts. Devanagari is probably the most famous or the most well known. Tibetan is also one of the ones. Mm, Tibetan can use a sequence or a combination of consonants. You could call them clusters, but they don't always function as clusters. Clusters would be like struck, the STR in struck, right? They don't always function that way. Sometimes the secondary letter changes the pronunciation of the first letter in languages Tibetan. Here are some examples of Devanagari. As I said, it's the most popular abugida, or the most well known, probably the most used as well across the planet, given the number of Hindi speakers. The oldest and largest is the, as I mentioned earlier. Vowels are marked with diacritics. Those diacritics can vary widely from Brahmic script to Brahmic script. Sometimes they're just little dots or little lines above or below. Sometimes they're hooks and arches to one side or the other. The Canadian Aboriginal syllabics or syllabary, vowels are marked by rotating or flipping the consonants. That's the most unusual. However, it should be noted that CAS is a neography. It was created specifically for Indigenous American languages using, believe it or not, uh, the Devanagari base character symbols as inspiration. Oh, nice. Yeah, Cass is good. It's good inspiration. I don't like the way it was originally done, but I do think that there have been some alterations to it over the years that have been improvements. Um, Vowel representation after a consonant, initial vowel representation, inherent vowel. These are all features of various Indic scripts, as well as some other. Um, let's take a look at this here. Boom. Actually, let's. There we go. All right. So you have North Indic, South Indic, Tana, Ethiopic, and Canadian Aboriginal. The Ethiopic is the one group that is not symbolically or symbologically related directly. There is a theory that Brahmic scripts are related to the Phoenician alphabet, which would mean that all of these are related because Ethiopic or Ethiopic, depending on how you pronounce it, also supposedly was derived from Phoenician. So that would mean all Indic scripts ultimately derive from Phoenician. But that is a theory. There is no hard and fast proof that that is the case. Here we can see some diacritic placement on Brahmic abugidas, right? Above, below, to the left, to the right, around it, within it, surrounding it, with also within it here, below and extend to the right with Javanese, and extend to the left with Javanese. So you'll see that these work a lot like affixes, right? You can have an infix, you can have a suffix, you can have a circumfix, much in the same way that morphology works. So do script adaptations, especially for abugidas, because of the way they work with the stacking. Stacking is Genetically. Yes. Thank you, Galen. Genetically is a good word in the sense of direct descendants. Yep, I would agree with that. I haven't ever read solid explanation of how Brahmi is related to Phoenician on a systematic level. Um, since we're here, let's take a quick little look-see. I'll share my screen again so we can take a quick little look-see. So I pulled up the Brahmic scripts page, okay? And let's see, history. Descended from the Brahmi script is clearly attested from the third century. Ashoka used the script for Imperial. It doesn't say it here. I don't think. There is a page that talks about it though. Do, 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 do. So let's do this. Brahmic Phoenician. I know I misspelled it. Everybody calm down. All right. So yeah, this is the page. I guess it is on that page. Huh. Wild. Let's look at this though. Where did it go? All right, here we go. Yeah, this is the image I was looking for. Um, yeah, Phoenician is a hard word to spell, but if we look up here, yeah, in the middle of this page, you can see the Brahma symbols, right? And to the left are the Phoenician. And then as it moves to the right, you can see the development of the Brahmic variations. And then you can actually see the modern Nagari there on the far right. And you can see the modern English on the far left. So it does stretch the imagination a little bit, but not a lot. Probably these last two characters are the most strained. Um, but if I'm being honest, the rest of them look pretty easily translatable or transferable across that chart. So it does make sense when you see a chart like that, that Brahmic, the Brahmic scripts could have very easily come from Phoenician, but there's no hard and fast like one-to-one evidence where like you hold up a there's no Rosetta Stone to show that the Brahmic scripts genetically uh, directly descend, to use Galen's terminology. All right, but we got that done. We looked at that. All right. Now on to what we really want to look at, the conscripts, the constructed writing systems. Now, we're going to start with mine. Hold on, let me do a little bit of screen rearrangement here so I can see what I'm talking about and see myself and what's going on. There we go. That's better. All right. So this is mine. This is Moya. Um, it is a strictly calligraphic abugida. I adapted it from a very old script, a script that I started in 1999. Um, at the time, it was mostly just scribbles on a piece of construction paper with a green marker. And no, I'm not joking. Um, it can be written left to right, or it can be written vertically top to bottom. However, it looks kind of junky when it's written top to bottom, unless you're making some flourishes that make it almost illegible. But that's not the point. Um, it was primarily, yes, thank you, Galen. This took much practice to get this just right, and that symbol that you see there is something that I'll cover here in a minute. It's a combination of the ma and the ya, and then the little dot on the left-hand side there marks the O. So it literally just says Moya, and that's two strokes. That's the stroke for the M and the Y, and then the dot. It took me probably a week of practice to get that just the way I wanted it. But yeah, so this is probably one of my oldest scripts, and I've been using it off and on for a quarter of a century. Um, so I'm going to show you some of the historical development. Abstract nature. I would agree, Juno, and I have actually done that, but I've only done it when it wasn't a like truly legal type situation, something that might come back later. Never sign a check with a conscript, folks. Never sign a check with a conscript. So I'm going to look at some of the historical development, then I'm going to go over the actual script and how it works. I got two more up. I'll give you the names of them. One is a Yeri. Anybody who's watched this channel knows that I am a fan of Karsten Becker's work. He is an excellent conlanger and conscriptor. And then another one is from a movie done by Britton Watkins and Josh Feldman. And they had language work and script work help from William Annis. So we're going to look at that. But first, we're going to cover this one because it's easy, and I know this book backwards and forwards because I wrote it. All right, so the historical development. All right. That's good. Tugra. I think I know what that. Yeah, I'll look that up later, but I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about. So in the upper left-hand block there, block number 1, you can see this is like the oldest version. It's kind of stiff, right? It doesn't really flow very easily. The characters seem sort of disjointed. Someone once told me on the Zompus bulletin board it looked like people dancing with swords, which, okay, sure, I'll take that. But I wasn't super thrilled with the way it looked. So I went back to it, worked on it some more, came up with a little bit better lines, a little bit better connections, but it's, again, still trying different brushes. Um, well, Galen, this may look like Nushu, but if I showed you Nawa, you'd say, oh, yeah, that's definitely Nushu. I'll send you that one some other time. It is also an abugida, but it is vertical only. Well, not only, but yeah, that one always got compared to Nushu. This one, though, this stage here was still kind of stiff. So I went and tried some thinner brushes in stage 3, which was about 15 years ago. And I liked the way these brushes worked. I liked the form that it gave me, but it was very difficult to not blotch with them and not to bleed on the page with them. So again, I scrapped that and I went to, by the time I get over here to stage 4, I had found some pretty cool stuff, apps, some applications that I could put on my phone or on my tablet that were sort of brushstroke uh, capable. And because they were brushstroke capable, I sort of went at it and came up with much more flowy lines, better, way better connections. And I also, if you'll notice, up here in block 1, I only had 4 diacritics at the time. That was for an older language, a language that didn't have as many vowels or as many vowel combinations. So I only had 4 diacritics. By the time I get down here, you can see there's far more diacritic work involved. There's far more going on in there. Now, block number 5, this was actually created by Britton Watkins. He did it sort of as a favor to me, and sort of as an experiment because he liked this script a lot. I was in the 2017 Conlang documentary, and during that time, he and I were exchanging messages, and he created a nice little sample for me. And he gave me permission to use his work, and I made a better, fuller version of my script using his work. And as you can see down here, towards the bottom of the page, it says, these refinements have been subtle and nuanced, but have, over time, been transformative of how it is written and read. This trend is towards sleek complexity that attempts to be reflective of how the language works. All right. So here's the consonants. All abugidas, as we established, I actually do work it out in another document how it is somewhat culturally relevant. Um, the people that I put in my culture are sort of in the copper age. You could say middle copper age. And so in my mind, the idea was they've gone from using wooden stylus or bamboo stylus or some sort of quill to something more sturdy like a copper rod with a brush on the end of it. That was what I worked up in my head. I haven't really put it all on paper, just notes here and there. Okay, but as mentioned, all abugidas have the same trait of an inherent vowel. So here are the consonants, pa, ta, ka, across, as you can see, ha, ta, tla, wala, ya, ah. The ah stands for, um, which is not phonemic, is it's used to separate intervocalically, meaning vowels that are not pronounced together. Um, but you'll see some of the examples. And then I have these prenasalized plosives here, mpa, mta, and mka. Um, yeah, and so I didn't like the way the ah looked at the beginning of words, and so I made this little rule. When a vowel begins a word, the la character is used. It does not cause confusion as L begins no head words in the kala conlang. So the word may start with this character, but the la is not pronounced. So little things like that don't rely on the inherent vowel rule. They don't rely on a virama. They don't rely on anything. That is a orthographic rule. It's a spelling rule, right? And so little things like that, if you can work out a way to include something like that, it adds a layer, a thin layer, but a layer of naturalism to your system because you're adding a spelling rule that only the readers of the system are going to be immediately familiar with. Keep that in mind. Add certain little spelling rules that only the users of the script would be immediately familiar with. All right. The basic vowels, the five Japanese or Spanish vowels, if you will. You'll see that the front vowels are marked at the top and the back vowels are marked below, and they're marked below what I call the spine or the stem. It does the tail is irrelevant to the vowel marking except when it gets in the way, right? And of course that's true when you're writing anything calligraphy wise or just handwriting. If you have a word like soft, right? You can cross both the F and the T together, but if you have a word like salt, you have to be careful when you cross the T so that you don't cross it and make it look like SATT, right? So little things like that that you have to keep in mind. Here's what labialization looks like. You just put this diagonal stroke from the bottom left to the upper right, and then you mark the vowels accordingly. And palatalization, I never say that word right. Just know that about me. Palatalization. There we go. That was fun. Is the same mark but above the stem or the spine, and then you mark the vowels accordingly. Okay. So if you look here, you have ye, which means you have the palatalization mark here, and then the a from up here, the eh. All right. Here are some normal examples with the normal system. Um, Powdolization. That's funny. I like that. I might use that later. All right, so these are just normal examples. Um, Nothing fancy, nothing crazy here going on. You can see here, yoma, meaning today, it does start with that law character or uh, the law symbol, and then it is marked with I, but it is not pronounced li. It is pronounced e because it's at the beginning of the word. Okay, so again, a spelling feature that only the readers are going to know. All right. And the rest of this is pretty much spelled out. Okay, so you can see here, Sichuan, Sichuan, it has the N marking, which is right here. These are other symbols used. Now, this is different than most abugidas because I just randomly came up with this idea, and apparently it is not common. It is not even, I haven't found a natural language that does this, but these are grammatical features that have uh, a symbol or a mark that go on the word, right? Gemination is not a grammatical feature, except that it kind of is because it changes the word a little bit. I don't know, kind of on the margins. Uh, Sandwich, does sandwich do that? Oh, okay. I'll take a look at that. But so in or n marks the accusative case, k or k marks the negative, and then m. Oh, okay, okay. The third person singular is lowercase. Thank you for that, Galen. All right, so and then this one, as you can see, I didn't do anything fancy with these. It's just the letter. It looks like the letter C just sort of rotated uh, to the 4 degrees or to the four corners rather, north, south, east, west, which it is. But when it's written out, it is much easier to determine what you're looking at. So you got plurality, you have the accusative case, the negative mood, and gemination, marked with those four symbols. So when you see Chihuan, right, the project, you know that that is in the accusative case. It is receiving the action. And here is a longer sample, right? Now you'll see little characters like this here, right? We're going to talk about those in just a second. And then you'll see here, there's the ah, the glottal stop, ah, and that's because it's in the middle of a word. And you'll see it right there. Mitle atsumwan, mitle atsumwan. All right. What else? What else? What else? What else? So this mitlin is, oh, it's right there, right there. That is one of the more complicated characters. And we'll get to a spot, and I'll just go ahead and tell you now. No, the swastika is not part of the deal. Nope, doesn't work. So get that out of your little tiny brains right now. All right. So this, if folks are familiar with me online, you have seen this before. This is a monogram. I refer to it as the whole face or yotsakwa. It resembles the face of someone in deep meditation. It includes the strokes for every letter and number of the Moya system. It is a monogram. There are other monograms out there for the Latin alphabet. Um, some people have made some things that look like they contain all the possible strokes of Chinese or Hansa. I think there's one for Hangul as well. They are a thing. They are part of natural languages, so you'll see them out there. Yes, that is what this symbol is, Juno. This is because this is my oldest script. It is also my favorite. It is near and dear to my heart, and so I use this symbol pretty much everywhere I can. It's even my screen lock on my phone. Older versions contained the diacritic marks, but this version prevails as the stylistic representation of the monogram. All of the moyamatse are visible, are also visible to the careful observer. We're about to talk about those. All right. So the number system, the numeral system, I'll go ahead and tell you guys now. I'm not a math guy. Not big into numbers. I know they're useful. I know they're great. They're awesome. They're really cool. I basically cheated and used more or less an extrapolation of the Mayan numbers as well as some Atlantean. Logistical. Well, you can always try, Galen. You can always try. Um, no one would fault you for trying. But yeah, the numerals are not very complicated until you start writing big numbers. You kind of have to look at it and sort of just, what am I looking at? All right. So here's the serif version. Again, it was created by Britton Watkins. You can see that it's very uniform. It's very tailored. I use it, a larger version of it rather, on my blog a lot when I'm posting new words and such, because it looks very official. I'm not a huge fan of serifs, but this version of this script really works, and I like it. Those little hooks at the bottom of the tails that drape to the right, those little hooks there, they work so well for hanging the grammatical markers and for the vowel diacritics really well. But what I want to point out here is that this chart shows the entirety of the abugida system. So earlier when we saw the north wind and sun sample, it looked really intricate and detailed and everything, but there it is in all of its glory. There's not much, there's nothing else to this. I don't use punctuation, only the grammatical markers. All right, so the Moyamache. This is probably my favorite problem. um, some of the characters, when you write them together, they can share a stem. They can share the middle part. And yes, I know what I said a minute ago, and everybody's looking at the Tanya symbol, and they're thinking, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, that's kind of close." But I would urge you to look very, very closely. That tail has to come all the way down. It can't sit there to the right. It can't have a right angle in it. It has to curve. If it has a right angle, all right. So just put that out there. All right, cool. But some of these they worked so well together that I just decided to make a chart of all the ones that would be possible. Other ones might be possible depending on how you're writing, whether you're going top to bottom or left to right. And what's really cool is with these, all you have to do is add the vowel diacritics, and you've got a whole new word, obviously. And most of these words have definitions, the words that you see underneath them, but not all of them. This one, Taya means husband, Maya means water. Now, if you look at this one and you compare it to what we saw at the beginning, Moya, that's that's the same set of characters. This one is just written with a serif, and the front page is written in calligraphy. All right. So calligraphic variation. This was why I made this script. This was the point of this script from the beginning, was so that I could have flowy uh, designs that I might be able to move around and make something look pretty with them. This is one of my favorites here. I took the Japanese word yama. I did. I stole it. It's mine now. But if you look there, it looks like a mountain sort of crest there. This would be the cavernous valley between them. Yeah. Mawa, this would be the bud or the stem rather, or excuse me, the root. And this would be the stem, and this would be the falling bud of the flower. Tea here, this would be a little teapot and the steam coming out of it, but it is literally tsa-e. You think Hittite might be the only script with grammatical markers because of, right, but I don't know that Hittite was an abugida. I was talking about abugidas. No, but you're right. Yeah, you're right. It does have grammatical markers because of the acadiograms. You're right. Yeah, cool. Thank you for that, Satone. All right. Nalo, it's a syllabary, right? We were this is abugida stuff, but you're right. It is a syllabary. So there's smile. This one I really enjoyed coming up with. The word was already there. Um, the word was already there, but as I wrote it, I started to notice that if I gave uh, the arm of the ta a little extra bend, that it would look like the wings. Right here's the wings, here's the beak, here's the body, and here's the caudal feathers of the eagle, the tail feathers. Right. So that literally just says eagle, and it kind of looks like one. And this here, Manka, I drew it to look like icicles hanging from a roof or a ledge. And then this is just, This down here at the bottom is just an example of how the progression to a Shoto-esque kind of calligraphy was possible. So this is ki, ya, so self-awareness or to be self-aware. This is the moyamache or the combination of the two together. And then as you see, it kind of started to look like a three with two little eyes. And then this was the final form. But if you look very carefully, you can see it looks very much like the mixed, the combination form. All right. And then here's the thin brush style that we looked at earlier. Here's a sample there. Here's the wide brush style from earlier. And then a square brush style that I didn't show you guys yet. This is the least complicated. It's inspired by Kufic calligraphy. I did a whole year-long study on Kufic. There was a page on, um, I forget, one of the wikis. I think it might have been somebody. Oh, it was Neek from the ZBB. On the Neek wiki, I did a whole series on Kufic calligraphy while I was studying Arabic. So Moya Tapwa, as you can see, it does kind of look like Arabic, but I don't really use this one that much. It's just included because I came up with it. So there you go. That's Moya. That's my oldest script. It is an abugida. It is very stylistic for a reason. It is my first love and probably one that I will use for a long time. All right. Now, I already did a review of Ayeri, so I'm not going to get too far into the woods on this, but I am going to show you uh, just sort of the basics here. So when we look at this, as you can see, he has his consonant graphemes up here. He has a hollow symbol or a symbol. Um, yes, Otone, you probably did. Um, so this one has no inherent value, even though the rest of them have this character does not. It's a little tweak. It's a little kind of just sort of nudge of a feature, but it's really useful. As you look, though, he also does some ligatures, which is not uncommon. Devanagari does ligatures. Tibetan does some ligatures as well. Um, abugidas sometimes will do ligatures to save space, but also if they are very commonly used, right? Here's some additional consonants that he uses, consonant graphemes that he uses for for words that are not Ayeri. Um, as you can see here, if I zoomed in a little bit, zoom in a little bit there. So qua is the ka and the va together, right? Which is really cool, I think. Sa is the ta and the sa together, and the same for ksa. Yeah. So it's practical, it's logical, and yet it's still beautiful too, right? If you can design a system that is practical and logical and also has some aesthetic appeal to it, you'll probably use it for a long time. Vowels, as you can see, very easily marked above, but he also has, here's the diacritics for the vowels, independent of, or used on that hollow character or the character that has no inherent vowel. You can create diphthongs as well. So this would be ya, ye, yeah, okay, ru, rua, rua, right? And so you get the more complex syllable there. It's considered one syllable the way it's written, but it may be pronounced slightly less as one syllable. There might be a little more a in there, mora rather. Yeah. But you see, he also has secondary vowel graphemes, right? They can go below. They're similar. They're almost identical, just flipped to the ones that go above. But he uses this to aid in having more vowels, diphthongs, um, and in lengthening the or maximizing the information contained in one syllable. And you can see here, he also has a nasal final or a nasal moire there, and he can mark gemination, right? So it's a consonant doubling diacritic or a geminator. He has so many different diacritics throughout this that the syllabary itself is minimal and is it ends up being mostly diacritics, which I think is really cool because you need fewer base symbols if you are going to elaborate and have a lot of different diacritics. So, regardless of the number of sounds you have, uh, vowel sounds or vowel combinations you have, if you have a good system in place, i.e., how you mark them, where you mark them around the consonants, you don't need as many consonants. I would agree with that. Yes, Galen. Sort of a Vietnamese vowel principle. Sort of. Yes. The Terminator's linguistic cousin. Yes. Geminator. I will double back. All right. Yeah. Allographically prepended diacritics. That's a fancy way of saying it goes in the front. Um, so you have nga, uh, and then you put the aspiration or frication of consonant, not which is not. Yes, that was good, Galen. Um, and it's prepended. It's marked in the front. So he's got vowel markings that go above, vowel markings that go below, and then he's got these prepended diacritics that go in before the consonant. Remember, this is read right, or excuse me, left to right. So these go to the left of the consonant. And then I think there's a couple more. Um, but as you can see, the syllables themselves become extremely complex as you move through. Okay, extremely. And in the superscript, yeah. So these go above as well, but it deletes it. So this is like a virama, right? Upper nasalizer, upper duplicator, stopper, all kinds of good stuff here. And then he's got his numerals. As you can see, Karsten, similar to me, not really too detailed with the numerals. These are just digits, essentially. It is, however, a duodecimal number system, which mine was not. Mine's not. Mine's a decimal because I'm lazy with math. I own up to that. Um, yeah, so he's got punctuation, which I don't have for my system. Yes, I like the in name in universe name for the diacritics as well. Um, it's it's a way that you can add depth not just to the language but to the culture as well. How do you etymologically derive the name of the punctuation? Could be interesting. Exactly, they're not just inventing ad hoc roots. Um, what's interesting to me is when you take stock of the punctuation marks that he decided to include, they're not too dissimilar from natural languages. But when you look at the words he's using, like shouting point, which is essentially an exclamation point, I I would not necessarily have thought to use that immediately, but it's pretty cool. And then he's got abbreviations. These are less common punctuation marks. He's got a speaking point, meaning quotation marks, beside point, bracketing of text, etc. Uh, a breaker, which marks a line break within phrases, which I think is kind of cool. Um, so yeah. Now, my favorite part of a Yeri, and it better be yours too, is the different styles. Now, I showed you in mine how I had different styles and different methods of writing it. So does Karsten. He has the book style. This is the one that he uses pretty much everywhere online, or he used to use. He doesn't really post as much about Ayeri as he used to, but this was the style that he would use for those posts online and samples and examples. This one was the angular style that he came up with, and it's meant to reflect or mimic very closely Javanese, which I think it does handily. Um, and if you look at these two samples, you can compare and see that it's stroke for stroke, character for character, the same thing, but you can definitely tell differences in the style, right? Then this is the hand style or handwritten. This is probably my favorite, not just because it looks cool, but because it's the most natural looking out of all of them. I understand book style and its purpose, but this looks like it's been developed, like somewhere in Nepal over the last 600 years or so. Um, and then he's got a black letter style. I would agree with that, Juno. The variation does make it feel very real. The black letter style, eh, it's whatever. It's a thing that exists. I don't really like it, but I can see the appeal. It's not inexplicable why someone would like that. All right. So again, if you like a Yeri and you want to know more about it, I recommend you go. Did I open the wrong book? No, I didn't open the wrong book. Okay. Um, I recommend you go watch my Yeri review. It's on my channel. It's not the longest one, but it's pretty thorough. I talk about the diacritics a lot because there's a lot of them. All right, so now we're going to look at Sinyamda and Britton and William, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, created this. This was primarily for the feature length movie Sin. Um, the I think the movie came out in November of 2014. As you can see, there is a font that was made for this system, um, and it was used in promotional materials for the movie as well as appearing in the movie on various props. I think there's a couple of pictures of props in here, but we're going to take a look at this one because it has different versions, different fonts, and it is quite well designed. It's not my favorite of all, and I will be doing a review of this one later. I have it on my itinerary um, sometime soon, I guess. Um, but ultimately, yes, there will be a review on this. So um, here he talks about the departure points. The directors of the film had approved the look of the. So they started to sit down and essentially they made some strokes on paper, and they used a specific type of pen to get a specific aesthetic look for it. And if you look at some of these characters, they look very natural. They look very flowy. Um, they look like they could have come from any real natural language west of Europe, or excuse me, east of Europe. To me, on the next page here, you get a full chart. So these are considered the proto letters. And what I want to point out here is you don't even have to do much research on this just to look and see that the vowels obviously append to the bottom of the consonants. Okay, so that's of normal or natural, but it's uncommon in natural language, natural abugidas. The majority of them tend to start at the top. Some of the Brahmic or Indic abugidas, they would favor the left or the right of the character of the consonant, and then they might also use the bottom. But the bottom in Indic scripts tends to be for a secondary point of articulation, for like labialization or palatalization, uh, plow-do-lization. um, but you get the point. They did this to be unique and different, and I think it works. And as you can see, um, the voiced and unvoiced consonants uh, match pretty closely. Um, as you can see here, S and Z, and then there's the uh, K and the G, right? So the voicing gets a bar to the top on the top left portion of the character, and then they have some geminated consonants, and the gemination gets a hook to the bottom left on the left side of the character. So it's predictable, it's logical, and falls within the universe. I don't know if this is an in-universe alphabetical order. I regret to say that I have not seen the film. I forget what streaming service it is on. I know it's on one of them, but you do have to rent it. I have not gotten up the gumption to rent it yet. Um, but yeah, uh, I it may be in universe based on the preview that I saw, and I did watch a preview of the film. The it's they're human-like beings on another planet, or it's like a futuristic planet, I believe. That is a common thing these days, not having dollars. Common indeed. All right, so writing down words. So as you can see here, some of these can be clumped up together to make some really Hansa looking stuff, but it's not. It's not Hansa at all. Um, and Josh even says apparently that it looked too much like Chinese. Okay. They used Japanese brush pen, so obviously it's going to look like that. And so they wanted to have it look foreign, but not be too foreign. They had a small budget. Okay. So they wanted to have something stylized, but not too stylistic, if that makes sense. And so this is what they settled on. And as you can see here, this is one of the props from the film. I'll zoom in on that Joker. This is a book that they aged and they put a label on it. And this is the version of the script that they used on the front cover. As you can see, it's still very reminiscent of the original that we saw at the top. The characters are thematic in that they are um, easily relatable, or similarly styled without being overtly patterned like Tingwar. As we move forward, so they start talking about the language here, and then as you can see, they use the font um, in describing the language. And here is another promotional poster. I believe this actually appears in the film as well. I think it's in part of the premiere or the preview that I saw. And so you look there, and even though they tried to avoid the Chinese appearance, it still looks like it could be some sort of Hangul-esque or East Asian something. Not saying it looks exactly like it, no, but it looks like that could it be its provenance. They have some internal history here that goes along with the storyline. I don't want to spoil the movie, so I won't read that to you. Here is a screenshot from the film, right? And you can see up there in the middle to the left side there, the script is used in the film, and these folks are even wearing badges that have the script on it. I guess this is an aerial shot that they used in the film. I don't know. It gives you a sense of dystopia. But if you look here, you can see the script was superimposed on a poster or a sign, I guess, that's supposed to be above this hovel area. There's a flying spaceship above a factory, and there's some characters from the film. No script here. As you can see, they mapped it out based on the phones or the phonemes. Here are the vowels. As you can see, nice 8 vowel system, not no boring 5 vowel system. I agree with you, Juno. Having fleshed out languages put in movies and shows correctly with props, it's magic when they do it right. It's magic. It adds so much realism. And as you can see here, they started talking about word shapes, which clusters were appropriate or authorized or The phonotactics is the word that they wanted to use, but I looked for it when I first opened this up. I didn't see the word phonotactics in it. They did come up with some digits, and as you can see, it is a decimal system or a base 10 system. The digits seem a little funky compared to the script, but it works. It doesn't have to be, perfectly aligned to the script aesthetic. Numerals often aren't in natural languages. Off, I know Hansa has some. They have a regular numeral, then they have like an accounting numeral. So like, but they still look like Hansa. But other natural languages, they use really weird different numbers. The Romans were just lazy. Yeah, it does look like they were borrowed, and that's kind of my point. Numerals across natural languages do often differ noticeably. I won't say significantly, but noticeably from the system of writing. They have punctuation marks, and they talk about the morphophonology, etc. They get really into the language stuff. But what I want to show everyone towards the bottom, I'm going to have to skip. Let's do this. I think it's like 85. Yeah, they got some. Oh, there it is. Are you ready? Yeah, even Arabic does that with its own numbers. Yep, you're right. You're ready? Here we go. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Font and script variants. Okay. And the main reason I wanted to show you this one before my review for it airs is what you're going to hear me talk about in the review is the variations. Just like in Moya with mine, the variations in the fonts and available like writing styles. Now, when we look at this doesn't look exactly like what we first saw with the Japanese brushstroke pen, right? This looks different. This looks digital almost. This looks computerized, obviously, but you get my point internally. And here you can see there's this a scene in the movie, and look, this was extremely interesting to me. Similar to how a mugshot would work, they use two different boards or two lines within a board, and they use actual markers to mark vowels on the bottom board. And here's a bolder, darker version. Here is a thin line type version. Okay. But as you can see, you still maintain that sort of style, right? And this is also from a prop. I think this was a sticker that they put on a book. I can't remember exactly. Then we have this more sort of like Arial type version or Times New Roman looking version. But the pièce de résistance, ladies and gentlemen, is this, the cursive version. This, when you see this written, this looks like a Brahmic script to me, but it's just, at a glance. Once you look at it and you sort of focus in, yes, you recognize that it is in fact not Brahmic. But these two little hook lines that you see on the top of each one of these vowels, that would disappear and the vowel would be appended to the bottom portion of the consonant. And so each one of these characters would then end up with a tail that signifies its vowel. So it's extremely aesthetically pleasing. Here is more like a pencil line drawing, much thinner, um, less intricacy with the lines, just pretty much straight pencil line drawings. And you can start to see that the vowels become much less complex, much less flowy. Yes, even the empty character changes between variants. Yes, very well spotted. And so here are some names that they did in the handwritten version. And this right here, it just jumps right off the screen. It just jumps right off the screen as being naturalistic. I think my two favorites here are Srom, right? And then Chlelod. This right here, it's just I mean, it kind of looks like graffiti that you might see on the side of a train, but it also just looks like a natural script. It just looks very natural. So those are the three abugidas that I wanted to go over with you guys. Um, Again, the primary goal of abugidas is to establish some base consonants and then work out what you want to mark on those base consonants. And those consonants are going to have an inherent vowel, but it doesn't have to be ah. It could even be just a schwa. It could be something unique. I borrowed something from Pearson, one or Peterson, I think it's Pearson, and made an abugida like script for kala, but I made the inherent vowel instead of ah. I did that for a couple of reasons, but primarily just so it would be different. After a few months of writing with it, it became really, really boring because kala is so ah heavy. It is the most common vowel, just like in natural languages. So I was having to write the ah diacritic once at least, if not twice, in every single word. Uh, yes, kala is a boring conlang. I'm cool with that. But so I don't use that abugida very much at all anymore. But it still proved the point that you could have be the inherent vowel. What you also have to remember too is phonotactically speaking, some languages disallow certain vowels to follow certain consonants. Um, a good example, or a halfway decent example, because Hangul is an alphabet with abugida-like features, would be something like tui. Uh, Tui occurs, but it's not very common. Um, Old Persian cuneiform is okay. I I understand people's uh, affinity for cuneiform. It's not my favorite. I'm not super into cuneiform, except for the fact that it was used for so long by varying cultures that it's sort of a gateway to the past. I think that's my big appreciation for cuneiform. Aesthetically, though, whatever. Um, but the long and the short of the alphasyllabary or the abugida is if you establish your base consonants and you have enough ideas of which diacritics you want to use, how you want to append them, or where you want to place them, the rest of it will tend to fall in place. Now, just like with any good script, before you finalize it, I highly recommend you try to write some longer samples with it if you have a few longer sample sentences, because you enjoy. Okay, I'm with that. I agree with that, Saton. The structure is nice, but when you're doing your samples, don't write one or two words with your new abugida. Write sentences. The longer, the better, because what this does is it teaches you how well the diacritics flow on the consonant symbols. It also teaches you how well they flow against each other. Javanese is a good one. I would challenge anybody who's on the stream tonight to go look at Javanese and try to write a few words out. The placement of those vowels and the form of those vowels, it's not easy to write smoothly. Um, well done Javanese takes years and years of practice. More, I would imagine, more practice than it takes to learn English cursive. Just my opinion, uh, based on nothing more than what I've seen online. Um, well, the length of the word is important, sure, but do do test out a few sentences as well. Um, when you're building your abugida, probably the one thing to not forget is the punctuation. Most of the Brahmic scripts include some sort of word barrier or some sort of phrase barrier, depending on what the purpose of your abugida and the way your language works that you're making it for. You may or may not need that much punctuation, but it also might be very useful. Here's a question. Are there any abugidas that use base vowels instead of base consonants? Not that I know of. It doesn't make sense to do it that way. I'm pretty sure Japanese Braille doesn't do that. I thought, no, maybe not. Maybe Braille, no, the Japanese Braille is not syllabic that I remember. Yeah, there's always more consonants than there are vowels, so it doesn't make sense to have base vowels and then use consonant diacritics. Because, yeah, it kind of just doesn't make sense. I mean, unless you're talking about something like uh, maybe a tonal language. Each vowel and each tone would constitute the base character. So if you just for argument's sake, if you had 3 tones and 5 base vowels, you would have 15 base characters, and then you would mark the consonants on that. Uh, that would work. And maybe if you expanded it a little more and you did something like what Chinese has with the 2 nasal endings, n and ng, right? So you take those 15, you multiply that by 3 because you have no ending, then you have the n, and then you have the inga ending. So you'd get 45 base characters, right? And then mark your consonants on that. There you go. You just came up with a vowel based abugida to write Mandarin Chinese. Yay for us. Look at us. I'm so proud. All right, guys. I think that's pretty much going to be it for abugidas. I haven't picked a topic yet for the next stream. If you come up with a topic, if you want to request a specific topic, feel free to drop me a line anywhere on social media or on the comments page. Uh, Anywhere you can find me, let me know what you want to talk about, and we will go deep into it, just like we did tonight with abugidas. All right. Have a great night, everybody, and keep scripting.